spectrum, I think is probably a good way of describing you. Sonia Sodha, chief leader writer at The Observer. She wants a second referendum. Henry Newman, pro-Brexit director of the think tank Open Europe. Morning both. Thank you very much for joining us. Sonia, let's just start with you first of all. I'm sure you watched Theresa May yesterday. What do you make of her appeal, as it sort of seemed to be to the public?
Well, it looked like an extraordinary statement, really. What we saw from the Prime Minister was a really kind of anti-Parliament rhetoric, essentially saying, you know, it's not me, it's not my fault my deal hasn't gone through, it's the fault of MPs. Now, to me, this seems like quite a miscalculation on her part. We saw MPs from all sides of the Brexit debate actually react quite angrily to that statement last night. So on the one hand, you saw Labour MPs like Lisa Nandy, who Theresa May really has to win round if she's going to get her deal through Parliament next week, saying that they thought that the statement just, you know, wasn't helpful at all, and an attack on liberal democracy is what Lisa Nandy said last night. And then you also had more former Remainers in her government, ministers briefing last night that they thought that the statement was a mistake. So it feels like we're in a situation where Theresa May went out and addressed the public directly last night, but in doing so, she's actually got MPs' backs up even more and made her job even more difficult in getting her deal through next week. OK, Henry, was it a mistake?
Look, I think there's two different audiences here. I think with the public, I think this actually went down quite well, because I think most people, whatever their views, do just want a decision to be made on this, don't want it put back to them in either a referendum or a general election. They want MPs to make a decision. But the problem is, for MPs to make a decision, they need to change their mind. Either the Brexiteer critics on the backbenchers in her own party need to back her deal, or she needs to win across some of the Labour moderates. And unfortunately, her speech has totally riled both of those groups. And what I was hearing last night and this morning from different friends on the backbenches of the Conservative Party, from the Labour Party, was that this is going down like a cup of cold sick, unfortunately. What they want to hear, actually, is not that it's her deal or no deal. They want to hear a serious plan from the backbenches of the Conservative Party for her to set out her departure. That's what they want. They want her to admit that she's not going to take the party forward into the next phase of the negotiations. And what the Labour Party want is serious commitments to working across Parliament in the second phase of the negotiations once we're out on the future. And she didn't do either of those things. She said, I've done everything I can, it's your fault. And that, of course, has gone down very, very badly. Right,
OK, so let's forward wind a bit. Shall we presume she's going to go to Brussels today? We know that she gets this extension. So should we just say, for the sake of argument, there is a meaningful vote, so-called, next week? Henry, can she get this through Parliament next week?
Well, I think actually what she's done over the last 2 days will actually have backfired. She's less likely now to get the meaningful vote through next week than she was before. Because I think actually her critics on the backbenches, on the one side of the party, the Eurosceptics, the bigger bloc that are opposing her in the Conservative Party, they want no deal in many cases, and she's just offered a route to no deal. I think that's wrong, because I think Parliament will intervene and block no deal. But what they heard over the last 2 days is that no deal is possible again. Right, and then on the other side, sorry, very quickly, there remain backbenchers in the Conservative Party who also want somebody else to take the next phase forward. And she is, again, she's doubled down on her leadership, and she's absolutely stubbornly refused to say that she will not go on and on.
Sonia.
So I think the really big dilemma next week is the dilemma facing Labour MPs. So they need to decide whether they're going to decisively back a second referendum once and for all. And I think we might see an amendment called the Kyle Wilson Amendment, which is sort of a compromise amendment. We'll see that put next week. And what that says to Theresa May is, we MPs will back your deal, but only if you put it out to ratification by voters in a referendum. So that amendment will probably come next week at the same time as a meaningful vote. Big question for Labour MPs. Are they decisively going to back it? If they don't, what we're going to see is it's going to become much more of a deal-no-deal scenario. At least that's what Theresa May wants Labour MPs to think. Now, the problem facing Labour MPs is that they could still vote down her deal in the hope that if they do that, the EU will grant a longer-term extension. I think the EU probably would, but it's certainly not 100% certain. Yeah. And that means that if they were to vote down Theresa May's deal, they could actually be leaving us in a situation where we crashed out with no deal on Friday. It's unlikely, I think, but it certainly can't be ruled out altogether.
So many unknowns. Sonia Sodha, thank you. Henry Newman, thank you too. Thanks both very much.